I don't think there's any easy way of doing this, and the first thing to reflect on is the massive scale of the attack that Iran attempted on Israel. It was 301 weapons, 110 ballistic missiles, 40 cruise missiles. This was very significant. And so, of course, if you're sitting in Israel this morning, you're thinking quite rightly, we have every right to respond to this, and they do. But we are urging that they shouldn't escalate. In many ways, this has been a double defeat for Iran. The attack was an almost total failure, and they've revealed to the world that they are the malign influence in the region prepared to do this. So our hope is that there won't be a retaliatory response, and instead the world's focus should shift to Hamas. They still hold those hostages. They've been offered a deal that prisoners can be released from Israeli jails in return for some of those hostages, and there'll be a pause in the fighting. That's what needs to happen next, and that's what I hope we can focus on.
So Biden's saying take the win. That's the UK's view as well.
I think that's right. Look, I totally understand those in Israel who want to see more, but I think this is a time to think with head as well as heart, and to be smart as well as tough. And I think the smart thing to do is actually to recognise that Iran's attack was a failure. And we want to keep the focus on that, on Iran's malign influence, and actually pivot to looking at what's happening in Gaza and getting those hostages released, including, of course, the British nationals, who've been there over 6 months.
Yeah, the US has reaffirmed its ironclad commitment to Israel. How far does the UK's commitment go?
Well, we are a supporter of Israel and a supporter of Israel's right to self-defense. Our role in the military operations, as it were, was very much to backfill for the United States in the operation we do jointly together against ISIL in Iraq and Syria. So we provided planes to do that so the Americans could do more over the skies of Israel. But at the same time, we said that, look, if there are drones coming from that region into or missiles into Israel, we'll shoot them down, and that's what our very skilled pilots did.
We'll do that again?
We will, if there was another Iran attack. Iran has said they're not going to attack again, and after the failure of their attack, I'm not surprised. But absolutely, no, we'll always keep these things under review. We're trying to avoid escalation, and the action we took alongside the Americans and others clearly has helped to stop that escalation, because the Iran attack was an almost total failure.
Do you think Netanyahu has sound judgment?
I've known Prime Minister Netanyahu for over 20 years. We've had many arguments and disagreements, but it's our job to work with the Israeli government to support them in their campaign to get rid of Hamas, and I think that's right. You can't expect Israel to live next door to a territory that is governed by people that carried out the October the 7th attacks. But our job is to work with the Israeli government. We'll have our disagreements. We have some very tough conversations with them, for instance, about the need to get aid into Gaza, where I've been extremely tough with them about that. But I think rightly, because the situation in Gaza is unacceptable. There are too many people going hungry. There are too many people that can't get water and medicine. Now, the Israelis have now said 500 trucks a day, opening the port of Ashdod, getting more aid in. That's hugely helpful, and we need to make sure that's delivered.
Do you think he has sound judgment?
Look, we have to work with the prime ministers and the governments that are there. And we have, as I say, he has good judgment on many things, but there are times that we profoundly disagree. And when we do, we should have frank conversations. That's what friends do.
What's his bad judgment been of late?
Well, I think the not letting more aid into Gaza, that I think was a mistake. We were very frank with the Israelis all the way through that they needed to open up the crossing points. They needed to let more trucks in. They needed to make sure there was proper deconfliction so that aid workers could get around Gaza, and we wouldn't have, further incidents like the terrible killing of the World Central Kitchen workers. I think it was a bad judgment not to open up Gaza to aid earlier, and we had that argument with him. He's now said that's going to happen, and I'm very pleased he said that.
Is it bad judgment or good judgment to hit Iranian sovereign territory in Damascus?
Look, that's something the Israelis decided to do. We haven't made a... I know, well, I'll answer the question, which is, I can completely understand the frustration the Israelis feel when they look at the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and they look at the terrible things that they have done all over the world, including the support they give to Hamas. And of course, Hamas were responsible for October the 7th, and that is where all of this begins. So you can completely understand the frustration.